Good morning, guys. Just want to touch base with y'all today and make sure we're all on the same page about what this week's looking like and what we're going to do. So, first off, just a couple logistical things. Today we're going to have this video just for you to watch, and we're going to go over a few things that was from yesterday's assignment. And then moving forward this week, tomorrow we will have our live stream at the same time that we did last week. So at 2:30 tomorrow, have our live stream. You can ask questions. We can go through some things, review some concepts, do everything we need to do tomorrow. Then on Friday, we're actually going to have a quiz on Google Forms, which will be on Google Classroom, which we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow and review those concepts and talk about what that's going to look like. But again, today we just kind of wanted to touch base with you all, make sure everything's good, and go over a couple questions that we've had so far to this point, and then kind of get you where you need to go for today. So let's jump over to here, and let's talk about a couple questions that we had from yesterday's assignment. So first off, yesterday was talking about the whole concept of your reciprocal functions. So you have sine, cosine, and tangent, and then you have cosecant, secant, and cotangent. And that's kind of what yesterday's assignment was all focused on. So the biggest thing to understand before you get into those is we have our original functions, right? So we have sine, we have cosine, and we have tangent, okay? And I think everybody knows those three. I've talked about those three in geometry before now, in Algebra 2, different places, right? We've talked about them reviewing for ACT, so you know those. We're not going to do a lesson over sine, cosine, and tangent. But you have those other three, okay? So the other three are your cosecant, your secant, and cotangent, okay? So on those three, you just have to know which one those are connected to, right? We talked about right before we left, because of the coronavirus, that we go by the third letter rule, right? So cosecant, the third letter is S, so it goes with sine. Secant, third letter is C, so it goes with cosine. And then third letter of cotangent is T, so it goes with tangent. Then all you have to know that all of these three down here, okay, are just reciprocals of the original. So, if I tell you that sine up here, let me do it. If the sine here is 2/3, then the cosecant is 3/2. Just the reciprocal of it, right? Then same thing over here. If the cosine, say, was 1/3, okay, then the cosecant is just, or the secant, excuse me, cosine is 1/3, secant is 3, because it's a reciprocal of 1/3. And then same thing with tangent. If I gave you one, we just take the reciprocal of. So when we are looking at some of the questions that we had about the problem. So we had some questions like on 14 through 19, or I think you had to do 16 through 19 actually, or no, you had to do all 5 of those, or 6 of those. So on those, you're literally just doing reciprocals. So on 16, it says that secant of theta, which is just that angle, is equal to 5/9. And what it's wanting to know is, what is the cosine of theta? And again, if we're trying to find the cosine, we understand that secant is just the reciprocal of cosine. So in order to get to 5/9, you know the cosine has to be 9/5. And that's it. Okay? Then, when you get past the reciprocal function, so you get past the secant, cosecant, and cotangent problems, which are basically the 10 through 12, 14 through 19, and then 20 through 21. Because when you get it to 20 through 21, you have to find the 6 trigonometric functions, or ratios. So you find sine, cosine, and tangent, and in order to find cosecant, secant, and cotangent, you just take the reciprocals of those. So if you catch yourself on 20 and 21 thinking, well, I don't know how to find cosecant. Well, cosecant is just the reciprocal of sine, so find sine of that angle, and then just take the reciprocal of it. Okay, and then the last ones that we had questions on were the last two. The last two were 24 and 26. So if we are looking at those two, 24, it says to use a calculator to determine the values of each trigonometric ratio. So if we're looking at A on 24, it says to find the sine of 52 degrees and 47 minutes. So that goes back to the degrees, minutes, seconds format that we talked about in the very first target for this unit. So the first thing you have to do on this one is do some conversion. Right? So we have to take this 52 degrees and 47 minutes and convert it into just a decimal form of a number to just represent how many degrees there are. So, like we talked about in that unit, is it's going to be 52 point something, because 52 degrees, that's a whole number, so we don't have to mess with that. The minutes and seconds represents a decimal portion of that number. So if I'm going to bring that over here and think about, okay, 47 minutes, and we have to convert that. So we have to use the conversion rate, which just tells us that in 1 degree, there are 60 minutes. Okay? So we set it up like this, 1 over 60 here, because the units have to cancel out, meaning the minutes. So the only way that units cancel out when you set up these conversions is if they are diagonal of each other. If we were to put 60 minutes over 1 degree, then those units aren't going to cancel out because they're not diagonal. As is, we have minutes here, we have minutes here, so those are going to cancel. And then it's going to be left with just degrees, which is what we want. So then we just have to do the 47 multiplied by 1 divided by 60. And it gives us 0.783 repeating. So we are actually going to be finding the sine of 52.783 repeating. So we do the conversion. Then from there, either if you have a scientific calculator that you can use, or you go to Doceri, just making sure it's in the right mode, it's in degrees, you put that in there, and you're looking at, what, 0.796354, and so on, so on, so on. I don't know if it tells you to round to a certain point, but really 3 or 4 decimal places is fine as far as I'm concerned. So again, just recognizing the degrees, minutes, seconds, and be able to convert those. Now, if you have one that has 2 different parts, so again, if you were looking at one that said maybe 25 degrees, 15 minutes, and 8 seconds, you just have to do the same conversion, but just twice. So you would do the 15 when you would do 15 minutes. You multiply that by 1 degree, having 60 minutes. Then you do the same thing for the 8 seconds. You would take 8 seconds, and you would need the conversion rate for that, which is 1 degree for 3,600 seconds. And that's cut off by the desktop trial emblem there. So this fraction there is just 1 degree over 3,600 seconds. That's what that ratio is that you can't see there. And then you're just multiplying that by the 8 seconds, and then the seconds cancel, and you do 8 divided by 3,600, and then you just add that to the other decimal part. You get your full decimal, which would be 25 point something, 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 and then you just find whatever trig function that it tells you to after that. Okay, so that is number 24. Then the last one they had questions on was number 26. So on number 26, if we look at what that's asking, it's talking to us about filling out a table. Okay, so on these, it's basically just plugging in a bunch of stuff in your calculator. So on 26, you have to follow the table, and like for the first thing it gives you, it has the sine here, and then it just gives you the degrees. So if you do the sine of 18 degrees, it gives you that value. It says it is 0.309. Then if you do the sine of 16 degrees, it gives you that value. It says it's 0.276. And then you have to fill in the rest. So basically, you just have to type in sine of 14 degrees, 12 degrees, 10 degrees, 8 degrees, and go all the way to 2. And then you have to answer the question of what are each of these approaching. So as you're getting closer to 0 in the degrees, what is the sine values approaching? Then what are the cosine values approaching? Then what are the tangent values approaching? So on this one, it's just a lot of plugging in your calculator, writing the values down, and then just telling, is it approaching 0 or is it approaching 1? Okay, so hopefully that clarifies that. And then today, yesterday you should have started to look through section 5.3 on unit circles, which again, a unit circle is just a circle with a radius of 1. Okay, and then of course that unit circle is in a coordinate plane where the origin is the center point of that circle. Okay, so we're going to be looking at over today and tomorrow how to use this unit circle in relation to these trig functions. So you have to do some things like finding different values on a unit circle. So if I say find the cosine of 270 degrees, we have to understand kind of where to look and which one is that value. And if you look in your book, the two main things to look at is on page 292. So I'm going to write those here. 292. There's a chart, or not a chart, but there's some notes at the top. And it tells you like tangent of theta is going to be y over x. So when you're finding those, you're going to take your y value over your x value. And that's going to make more sense as we dive into some of these problems. And then like the secant is going to be 1 over x. And then cotangent is x over y, and cosecant. So familiarize yourself with those. And then the other kind of important chart is going to be on page 294. So yesterday, hopefully you read through that. You looked at some of those definitions and some of those charts. So today what I want you to do is actually look at some of those examples. So I want you to kind of look through examples 1 through 5. What I will do on Google Classroom is I will kind of link one question to each of those on the post that I'll link this video to. So you will have one question for each of those example problems in section 3 there. Then tomorrow we'll have our live stream and we'll talk about specifically any of those that you had questions on, give you some other ones to practice if you want those, and then we will get ready for our quiz. So that's about it. Again, if you have specific questions other than anything that we covered today, just let me know. I will try to get you what you need to clarify those. But other than that, just make plans to be at the live stream or part of the live stream tomorrow at 2:30. I'll link it on Google Classroom, but it'll be on the same the YouTube page that I created for this, and so it'll be the same thing. So get on there, be a part of that, ask questions, and then you'll have your quiz on Friday. And again, it's an online quiz, so that means you can use notes, problems, your book, video. I mean, you can use anything you need, but it will be one where you can't necessarily just ask me, like, Mr. Cox, I'm having trouble with number 6 on the quiz. Well, at that point, I can't really answer that question. But you have all the resources there to use to answer those questions on your own. So, again, feel free to email me today or just wait. Keep your questions until the live stream tomorrow, and you can ask those during that. Okay? We'll see you guys tomorrow.